And yet another very lovely morning out there to all of you, my dearest of friends. We left off in Ezra chapter 4 with them putting a halt to the building of the second temple, which is where we pick up right here, where the Lord, after all of this time, he begins to send Haggai and Zechariah, these prophets, unto the nation. Then the prophets, Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo, prophesied unto the Jews that were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel, even unto them. So as you'll notice, Haggai, Zechariah, we went over Malachi yesterday, but we have went over all of these three post-exilic prophets. These are the only three prophets sent unto them after their return from Babylon. But basically what those two prophets were doing was explaining why this famine came upon the land, because during the 15 years of the building process being delayed and halted, and the troubles that they were having, the Jews that they were having building the temple, there was a famine sent unto the land, which Haggai addresses. And Zechariah comes along in order to encourage Zerubbabel and Joshua, the high priest, because they were becoming so downtrodden and attacked by Satan. We're told about how Satan is accusing Joshua, the high priest, at that time before the Lord. And he's telling him, look at how filthy that this man is, and so forth. So Satan's coming against them. He does not want this temple built because he knows the significance of it. He knows that if this temple is built, then the Christ will come down, and he really did not want that. Then rose up Zerubbabel, the governor, from the Davidic line, just the governor, the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and began to build the house of God, which is at Jerusalem. Now they're doing this without the decree from Darius. Darius being the son-in-law of Cyrus, who is now the Persian king. And they're doing this without any decree from him, because these prophets have come along and they're encouraging them. They're saying, look, God is with us and he wants this temple built. At this time came to them Tatnai, governor on this side the river, and Shethar-boznai and their companions, and said thus unto them, who hath commanded you to build this house and to make up this wall? And these next words are a continuance of the interrogation from Tatnai, because it can throw some people off. They believe that it's a response from the Jews whenever it's not. It's actually, they're recalling the account that they tell the king. So they say, well, who commanded you to build this house? Then said we unto them, the Jews, after this manner, what are the names of the men that make this building? But the eye of their God was upon the elders of the Jews, that they could not cause them to cease, till the matter came to Darius. And then they returned answer by letter concerning this matter. The copy of the letter that Tatnai, governor on this side the river, and Shethar-boznai and his companions, the Apharsachites which were on this side the river, sent unto Darius the king. They sent a letter unto him, wherein was written thus, Unto Darius the king, all peace. Be it known unto the king that we went into the province of Judea, to the house of the great God, which is builded with great stones, and timber is laid in the walls, and this work goeth fast on, and prospereth in their hands. Then asked we the elders, and said unto them thus, who commanded you to build this house, and to make up these walls? We asked their names also, to certify thee, that we might write the names of the men that were the chief of them. And thus they returned us answer, saying, we are the servants of the God of heaven and earth, and build the house that was builded these many years ago, which a great king of Israel builded and set up. Speaking of King Solomon. Now Solomon, of course, being the son of King David and successor of King David, also it's very much believed to be he was the richest king that's ever lived. He has had the most wives of any other king or person ever. He had 700 wives, 300 concubines, very wealthy, very prosperous. David had extended his land. He's also very much a type of Christ, but he wound up falling into backsliding because he took upon him so many wives. He actually fell into pagan worship until the end of his life, whereas it's believed that he repented and came back into the Lord. But so in this letter, the Samaritans are making mention of what the Jews have responded, and Solomon was mentioned among those things. But after that our fathers had provoked the God of heaven unto wrath, he gave them into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, the Chaldean, who destroyed this house and carried the people away into Babylon. But in the first year of Cyrus the king of Babylon, the same king Cyrus made a decree to build this house of God. And the vessels also of gold and silver of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took out of the temple that was in Jerusalem, and brought them into the temple of Babylon, those did Cyrus the king take out of the temple of Babylon, and they were delivered unto one, whose name was Sheshbazzar, it's believed to be Zerubbabel, just the Babylonish name, whom he had made governor, and said unto him, Take these vessels, go, carry them into the temple that is in Jerusalem, and let the house of God be builded in his place. Then came the same Sheshbazzar, and laid the foundation of the house of God which is in Jerusalem, and since that time, even until now, hath it been in building, and yet it is not finished. Because these Samaritans were constantly delaying, they were constantly making problems for them, as we went over in the previous study. Now therefore, if it seem good to the king, let there be search made in the king's treasure house, which is there at Babylon, whether it be so that a decree was made of Cyrus the king to build this house of God at Jerusalem, and let the king send his pleasure to us concerning this matter. Chapter 6. Then Darius the king made a decree, and search was made in the house of the rolls, where the treasures were laid up in Babylon. And this is a very significant search, my friends. He's going to search out where Cyrus, many years before, had made this decree that said they were allowed to build their temple. G. Campbell Morgan commented at this point, It is easy to realize how easily this might not have been found, this decree. If such a document was not in the proper libraries, what more natural than to abandon the search? But under the divine compulsion, that search was prosecuted until the decree was found. Verse 2, And there was found at Ecmetha, which is believed to be in the Median part right here, Ecbatana, which is, as you'll see, above Persia and across from Babylon. And there was found at Ecmetha, in the palace that is in the province of the Medes, a roll, and therein was a record thus written. In the first year of Cyrus the king, the same Cyrus the king made a decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem. Let the house be builded, the place where they offered sacrifices, and let the foundations thereof be strongly laid, the height thereof 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 60 cubits, with 3 rows of great stones, and a row of new timber, and let the expenses be given out of the king's house. And also let the golden and silver vessels of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took forth out of the temple, which is at Jerusalem, and brought unto Babylon, be restored, and brought again unto the temple, which is at Jerusalem, every one to his place, and place them in the house of God. So after reading this decree, and Darius now has physical proof that Cyrus did declare this several years before, he makes his own decree unto these enemies of the Jews. Now therefore Tatnai, governor beyond the river, Shethar-boznai, and your companions, the Apharsachites, which are beyond the river, be ye far from thence. Let the work of this house of God alone. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews build this house of God in his place. Moreover, I make a decree what ye shall do to the elders of these Jews for the building of this house of God, that of the king's goods, even of the tribute beyond the river. Forthwith expenses be given unto these men, that they be not hindered. Notice the very strong language being used right here. Let the work of the house of God alone. The manner of expression intimates that Darius knew they had an inclination to hinder it. Thus was the wrath of the enemy, which brought about this decree, made to praise God, and the remainder thereof did he restrain. And notice how the progress has just drastically shifted in the Jewish favor because they had faith in God upon listening to these prophets, and they just started rebuilding again without any stopping. They said, nothing's going to hinder us anymore. And I do believe that the majority of the time, whenever someone does take that leap of great faith in God, even against the wave of the world, then God will make a very clear path, my friends. He glories in doing this kind of stuff. You know, it shows his power. And that which they have need of, both young bullocks and rams and lambs, for the burnt offerings of the God of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, and oil, according to the appointment of the priests which are at Jerusalem, let it be given them day by day without fail, that they may offer sacrifices of sweet savors unto the God of heaven, and pray for the life of the king and of his sons. Also I have made a decree that whosoever shall alter this word, let timber be pulled down from his house, and being set up, let him be hanged thereon, and let his house be made a dunghill for this. And the God that hath caused his name to dwell there destroy all kings and people that shall put to their hand to alter and to destroy this house of God which is at Jerusalem. I, Darius, have made a decree, let it be done with speed. It is so amazing. The king, instead of hearkening to their complaints as was natural and acting accordingly, sent back a decree not only forbidding them to molest the Jews in any way, but also granting them the most extraordinary privileges and encouragements as to the greatest of favorites of his. It's almost as if he's being moved by a divine being, isn't it? Then Tatnai, the governor on this side of the river, Shethar-boznai and their companions, according to that which Darius the king had sent, so they did speedily. When they received this order from the king, they applied themselves with as much haste to encourage and assist the work as their predecessors had used to put a stop to it. Thus the enemies of the Jews were suddenly made their friends. Verse 14, and the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo. And they builded and finished it, according to the commandment of the God of Israel, and according to the commandment of Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes, king of Persia. Notice, Cyrus is mentioned, Darius is mentioned, and who comes after Darius? Artaxerxes. And the commentators are just slightly divided between which of this Artaxerxes it is. Is it the Xerxes that married Esther? Or is it Artaxerxes Longimanus? Well, Longimanus is probably the more plausible. Evidently, the Artaxerxes Longimanus of the sequel, whose contributions and help did so much toward the perfecting of the general design, though the finishing here mentioned took place 50 years before his reign. Observe that he alone is called king of Persia, which shows that Ezra, very important, because there's a connection between who's writing about this Artaxerxes, Ezra, because that was the king, Artaxerxes Longimanus, during the time of Ezra. That's why he's praising this king, which shows that Ezra is writing in his time and adds his name to the original record. Because we're about to come up on chapter 7, where Ezra starts to give this autobiography of him and his group, the second group of exiles returning back into Jerusalem. 90 years or so since the first. So this Persian king Artaxerxes came after Esther. All right, just to catch everybody up. The temple was finished and dedicated in 516, 4 years after this decree of Darius was made, so was the temple finished. Then came the Persian king Xerxes I, in whom you may have seen from the movie 300, the Battle of Thermopylae and all of this. But Esther was the queen of that Xerxes, and then we read of his successor, this Artaxerxes Longimanus. Verse 15, and this house was finished on the 3rd day of the month Adar, which was in the 6th year of the reign of Darius the king. Remember, it was his 2nd year that he wrote this letter, let them build again. It was in his 6th year, 4 years later, that the temple was completed and dedicated. And the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites, and the rest of the children of the captivity kept the dedication of this house of God with joy, and offered at the dedication of this house of God 100 bullocks, 200 rams, 400 lambs, and for a sin offering for all Israel 12 he-goats, according to the number of the tribes of Israel. And they set the priests in their divisions, and the Levites in their courses, for the service of God, which is at Jerusalem, as it is written in the book of Moses. And the children of the captivity kept the Passover upon the 14th day of the 1st month. For the priests and the Levites were purified together, all of them were pure, and killed the Passover for all the children of the captivity, and for their brethren, the priests, and for themselves. And the children of Israel, which were come again out of the captivity, and all such as had separated themselves unto them from the filthiness of the heathen of the land, to seek the Lord God of Israel, did eat. And kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with joy, for the Lord had made them joyful, and turned the heart of the king of Assyria unto them, to strengthen their hands in the work of the house of God, the God of Israel. Very interesting how it doesn't say the king of Persia. but it says the king of Assyria. Cambridge commented, "This is a strange expression to be used of a Persian king, for by the context it naturally refers to Darius. It has been said that Darius is so called because the Persian kings were the successors to the great Assyrian Empire." Very interesting note right there.